Hello, 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 friend. It's just you and me today. There is no Andrew Chamberlain.
Oh, such a shame.
Just us for this episode of Association Transformation. And as always, I'm very excited. People are used to that by now. Elisa Pratt, Brewer Pratt Solutions. Yay, Nicole Crabtree, UST, US Transactions Corporation. I don't know if everybody knows really what UST
Yeah,
stands
yeah.
for.
Yeah, that's our parent organization, US Transactions Corporation.
I love it. And you are director of events, and so happy to finally have you here. Andrew and I have been privileged enough to be deliverers of education or invited to share content and expertise through the UST network. But tell us a little bit about what you do and really how broad it spans. I mean, I'm amazed how much content you guys put out.
Yeah, so our goal is to put out 200 events in a given year. Most of those are webinars. Yes, I know people are often kind of taken aback because we're also quite a small staff. So putting on that many events in a year is quite the undertaking. But sort of our one of our big sort of compelling sagas is the term that Wade, our president, likes to use, is the democratization of education. So the idea is
Those are
that
some big words.
yeah.
Democratization, education. Yes, sir.
The idea is that, with UST education, you don't have to worry about getting your credits at a conference, paying a lot of money for it. How am I going to get there? How am I going to travel? You've got 200 events available on your computer year round, and they're all free for the attendees.
So I think this is you provide this as a service, as a benefit, as equal access to education for association professionals, which is an interesting comparison for what association professionals then do for their members.
Exactly.
And I can only imagine there are education directors or curriculum directors that hear 200 events a year and throw up a little bit in their mouth. That how do you what's the measure of impact? What's the measure of success? I mean, if they're free, there's no money to measure. Is it just hitting that mark of quantity, or how do you know when you're doing it right?
I mean, we ask for feedback, right? After every event. We're required to anyway because we're offering educational credits. So as part of the certification, we have to ask people, how was this event? But we monitor that feedback. And if we were just cranking out 200 events per year and the feedback back was meh, then we wouldn't be succeeding. But we're consistently hearing from our attendees, I love your content. Thank you so much. Your speakers are great. This was right on time. That's what we're looking for. If our feedback is consistently that people are pleased with what we're providing and we're doing that 200 times, then we're winning.
Again, staggering. 200 events a year. How you must have the magical tips and tricks to be efficient. I mean, you
Yeah.
mentioned you're a small staff, and I'm assuming almost a majority of our audience, they're small staffed, at least in terms of the departments responsible for education and training and curriculum. What's the secret sauce? How are you doing? What's the efficiencies here?
So, there's a few things. One of them, project management is a must, okay? And project management software is a must. And,
Ooh, what do you
I'm kind of
use?
proud
Tell
of,
me, what do you use?
yeah, we use Asana.
Okay.
And when we instituted that, I had to sell the team on it because I'm the person that nerds out about project management and everybody else kind of rolls their eyes, and, because their talents and focuses are in other places. That's no shade to them. But I was like, this is going to increase our efficiency so much. Think of all the decisions you don't have to make. Think of all the things that are going to be automated. And everybody, got on board, and it's made a huge difference. Just being able to have our events run through that software and assign those tasks to everybody as just automatically, and people don't have to keep up with, have I done this task for that event? A game changer. And I mean, we couldn't do this many events with this small of a team without that.
That's well, and I know on the recipient side, I guess I've attended sessions, I've been a speaker, and it really is, it gives confidence to me when I get the email, when you said it was coming, when it has the information in it, when things stick to the schedule and stick to the logistics that you've laid out. And I can only imagine that's easier to standardize and replicate over and over again when you have that type of tool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like we've got this blueprint for a successful webinar. And we do repeat it over and over, but it's not boring because we're changing the content every time, right? So the experience for the attendees feels consistent and predictable in a good and comfortable and homey way, but the material they're getting each time is different. So it's exciting and it doesn't stagnate. Um, but also, like, a big part of what we do is to keep things simple. We're not always looking for the most like high tech solution, the most fancy way of doing things. Like you've been an instructor on our webinars, and we use the Zoom meeting format. We don't even do the Zoom webinar format. We keep it so that it's very interactive and people can talk in the chat, and it's sort of casual in a way. And that keeps things easier. There's just less sort of a tightness that you have to have with a really high production value of event that we don't have to produce, because we're having more of this community type event. Let's all get together in one place and share with each other.
So again, putting my kind of association staff hat on, I think of, those speaker databases and managing all the pieces of this. You said that there's a recipe for a successful webinar. What is that recipe? Let me write it down.
Yeah. Well, and I think the recipe analogy is great because there's lots of different kinds of pie that are delicious, right? And each one has its own recipe, and different kinds of pie can be delicious. But the way our pie is delicious is that we've devised a format where we sort of bake interaction into it. So in order to receive their educational credits that they're requesting, we have people answer what we call engagement questions in the chat. Because oftentimes, if you just ask people to unmute and start talking, people hold back. They're shy, but people aren't shy to put things in a chat. And then from there, you can call on them and ask them to tell you more. And they're less shy about that because they've already kind of given a little something in the chat. And so that is kind of our secret sauce, or our recipe, if you will, for having, like, electronic can be hard to sit through. It gets boring, right? And so that's our recipe for making it more interesting and feeling lively, is that people can participate and become a part of the content.
What would your recommendation be if you could give one piece of advice to an education and training department trying to serve members, give them what they want, what they need, but also maybe make some money? What would be your one piece of advice as it relates to a robust, training and education calendar?
Ooh, that's a good question. Hmm. I mean, I think the most important thing is to have an ear to what's going on in the industry. So like for me, I have to keep an ear to the association space, which, I didn't come from the association space. I'm an events person, right? So this is new, but learning to keep an ear out. So for the association, you got to keep an ear out in your industry, and be ready to pivot. Be ready when something comes up that's a really big deal. Be ready to serve that content to your community, even if it means, like, recently we had to throw together an event very much at the last minute because with things going on with the new administration, there was a little bit of upheaval in the association space, and we put together an event about that in a very short space of time. So having your ear to the community that you're listening to, and fostering that little bit of agility that will allow you when needed to be their trusted source is very important.
So that leads me to another angle of this, and that's kind of the calendar. How far out do you then build the calendar
Yeah.
if you want to be responsive and relevant? Obviously for planning purposes, I want to plan the whole year. I want to lock it
Right.
down, get it into project management and be done.
Sure.
But what's the sweet spot?
So, it's a mix. I mean, I have events booked out through the rest of the year, but I certainly don't have the calendar set for the rest of the year. Do you know what I mean? I've got a few events sprinkled through the second half of the year. Um, even though, even if you have things booked, you can still pivot. Like, I've had instructors who say, look, I want to put a different spin on this. It's more timely now. So maybe they booked their event 6 months ago, and now it makes more sense to focus in this direction. So just that ability to be agile, to say, okay, we're going to do this a little different. And also, I mean, we leave spaces in our calendar. I don't have everything open for the year. So when I send the speaker portal to our speakers, this is where they can go in and select a date in real time of what's available. I have certain things blocked off. So if something's not showing as available, it doesn't necessarily mean a webinar is already booked at that time. I may have it blocked for other reasons. And these are often places where I can insert something if needed as we go through the year. And I think that's very important.
So another tech request, what are you using for your speakers portal tool? What is your calendar booking tool?
That's a great question. So we're using Squarespace for the booking, for the part where they select the date. And so I didn't set all of this up, and I can't get into all the nitty gritty, but it integrates with our Google Suite. So we're in Google, and like I'm able to make adjustments through our Google Calendar back and forth with the Squarespace. Does that make sense? I'm not being very technical here, but so when an instructor goes in and selects, not only is that info in Squarespace, but since it's integrated, I now can pull up my calendar right in front of me and see, oh, so and so has booked that space, and then do everything that needs to happen after that.
Okay. Again, I'm just always looking for the not the shortcut, but the tool for efficiency. And if you guys are using it for 200 events, then it must be working.
I mean, that made a huge difference, because before that it was like going back and forth with an instructor. Look, I've got these dates available. What works for you? Oh, how about that one? It was very manual and back and forth before we had that. And now it's so easy.
So you're seeing, I think we've all come to appreciate digital delivery and virtual based education in a way that we didn't prior, to maybe the pandemic. But you're doing these multiple times a week. What are people responding to these days? First it was new, people didn't know how to do it. Then there was burnout, people were tired of it. Now we have more tools and tactics and techniques than ever before. But what are people really responding to? How does the content and maybe who's giving it and how they're giving it work best?
I mean, in terms of topics, it's so, we all know this, but it's AI right now, right? Everybody wants to know, everybody's scrambling to learn and catch up.
Please, I mean, I get it, but is that going to be the topic for the rest of the year? I mean,
I keep waiting for the attendance to drop on an AI topic, right? Thinking, no, it's still up there. So I know people are still hungry for the content, and that's okay. We're going to be, but it doesn't have to be the same every time, because look, this is a rapidly changing landscape, and there's a million different ways to look at it, like what you can be using it for and what you want to discuss about it. And so that's that. I mean, it's crazy.
More AI all the time. Okay, fine. Are panels the best?
Yes, I mean, people love panel discussions. Association people want to hear from other association people, right? So that's very big. Panels are great. If I have a vendor speaker, I do encourage them to bring in an association client as for a conversation about it, to make it more relevant and meaningful. So in terms of the formats, those are the most successful. Yes, the more conversational, the better.
Are people still using decks? Do you have a limit to how many slides they can have?
Yes, people are still using decks, and I will say, they can be used very effectively. If you're just using it for it's just like a visual place to hang your thoughts as you're speaking. It's okay. Like it's when you get so many words on a slide that nobody's even looking at. It's not a script, right?
It's not a script.
Not a script. So I see them used very impactfully, and yes, most people do still use them. I don't limit. I don't. People often ask me how many slides it's going to be right, and there is no answer to that, because the rate people move through their slides is vastly different. So no, I don't limit it.
It's an arbitrary thing. You don't need to give a number. Yeah.
I mean, if an instructor's worried about the length of their presentation, I tell them you've got to just go run your content and time yourself. It's yeah.
So what then do you like as, I mean, you for continuing education purposes, you have to know and direct your presenters to either be a 90-minute, 60-minute, 30-minute. I mean, that going in. But you also see people come in late or drop off.
Right.
What's the sweet spot in terms of people's digital attention span? And I'm sure it differs by content, but
it does. So we have one event that's called Presidential Forum, which is an association executive roundtable discussion, and it's very in-depth. So that one runs 90 minutes. But that's a very special kind of thing, and people don't get bored during it because everybody's talking and sharing ideas. It's a peer discussion, right?
Yeah.
For our webinars, our standard length is 60 minutes. We do have the option for a 30-minute. Interestingly, instructors are not going for that as much as we thought they might. They seem to want the hour and feel like they can put their content into it better. And I will say from the instructor end, I've taught a 30-minute webinar and a 60-minute. And even though the 60 seemed more overwhelming, trying to cram everything into 30 ended up feeling more overwhelming to me. So
Well, you can't
I
put the
get that.
60-minute content into 30 minutes.
Right.
You've got to rework the content, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Interestingly too, I see more people, a smaller percentage of attendance on the 30 minutes. So people register. Yeah, I would have expected the opposite, but I see less people show up on the day of as a percentage of the registrations
Okay.
for the
Okay.
30 minutes. And I see people drop off too. So, I don't know,
Interesting.
but that's pretty new for us. We've just been doing the 30-minute webinars for a few months. So I'm going to keep an eye on that and see where that goes.
I wonder if people don't think the subject matter weighty enough if it's
Right.
able to be delivered in 30 minutes. Like if somehow it undermines the credibility of the
Like
topic.
that, I wondered like that they feel less invested in it somehow because of that. Yeah, that
Interesting.
I've been
Very
considering.
interesting.
But again, this is new. We'll see how this plays out. Maybe it's just because it's a new format. People aren't sure yet what they think about it, and then they'll settle into it. So we'll see.
So what do you say no to? I'm sure you guys get hit up all the time, and associations get hit up. You mentioned vendors get hit up all the time by people who want to sell their stuff to your audience. What's what's the cutoff? Where and how do you say no?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate that I don't have to do it too often because most of the people who approach us are already the right people. Like, in other words, I haven't had a lot of people the audacity to come try to do a webinar who maybe shouldn't. So I don't have to do that too often.
Audacity.
Yes. But, there are times when you have to kind of help somebody reposition their content so it's not salesy if they're from the vendor space. This is very rare. I will say our vendor partners are very respectful of their audience and their time, and they're not there to just try to aggressively sell. They're there to be a subject matter expert in the space, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
how they're soft marketing themselves. But only a couple of times have I had to say, hey, let's dial this back a little bit. This is too product specific or too use specific. How can we make this more generally applicable? So that's one thing. Maybe early on we had a couple speakers who weren't as good at speaking. And again, that doesn't come up much anymore either because we've got such a presence in the space and people who know they're not good speakers are not approaching us and trying to get in. But early on,
Privately shamed them, yeah.
yeah. But those things have taken care of themselves. It hasn't really been difficult. Now, as we're moving into more of this era where we're known and people come to us and want to speak, we're probably going to have to filter through the requests a little more, actively. But so far, it's been okay.
Well, and you and I are both big fans, as maybe a New Year's resolution kind of thing. We're both into saying no. This is our new commitment to 2025. We're going to start saying no. You and I chatted about JOMO, the joy of missing out. And I wonder if with on demand, there becomes a joy of missing out, or there's no more FOMO in not being a part of these online educational programs because you're going to get it for free, or you're going to get it on demand, you're going to get the recording, whatever it may be. And I can only imagine that free education, you see that a lot. Are people showing up when they register? And then what's the usage of the on demand content?
Yeah, so people are showing up. I think we do very well with this. We know with events, a 50% turnout is average. And we are consistently, in the low 50s up to 60%. So I think we're doing well and our attendees are committed to our events and mean to show up.
So don't let it hurt your feelings. If you're putting on a free event, even for your members, and because you guys market the heck out of this stuff too.
Yeah.
So you're marketing the heck out of it, and getting 60% is a win. That's what you're
huge. Yeah. I mean, anybody with experience in events knows, like, if you've got 60% turnout, you've done great that day. So no, do not let it hurt your feelings when only half your people show up. That is
You know,
very
Andrew takes that stuff very personally. Andrew takes it all very personally.
yeah. No, I try to remember to set our instructors' expectations for that. Look, you're only going to get about half, maybe on a good day, up to 60% of your people turning out, and that's just expected. But we send the link to the recording for people to come back and listen to in our media library. And so some of them will do that. In the future, we might like to have those on demand available for credits. Right now, they just come for just the content, right? You can't get the credits on demand. And that's kind of nice, right? Because that's probably a big part of why we get such a good turnout. People want their credits, and they know if they come back to watch the video later, they can't get that credit. So
What are you tracking in terms of metrics? I mean, do you go back in and look at the media library and see what people are downloading or accessing as you choose your next year's
a
content
little
count?
bit. We're trying to get better at that. That's on our horizon right now for getting better. It's, with a small team, metrics are hard. A lot of it is like your gut and what's going on, but with AI, we're able to use that to help us somewhat with processing our data and speeding that up. So I'm hoping that we're going to get better at analyzing that as we go forward. In terms of the media library itself, Kate would actually have the more recent numbers on that, and I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. I just, we're as associations, we're expected to do everything now.
Right.
Hybrid, in person, on demand, live, virtual, and so it's everything. And you wonder when's enough, or what channel are we really trying to focus ourselves on? And it kind of becomes a trap. And if you don't have metrics or you're not looking at it, you just end up
Right.
having to continue to do everything.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I've definitely been diving into the metrics of the webinars themselves, and which time slots do people like, and which topics, which speakers, where are we seeing the highest percentage of turnout, and those sorts of things. And by the way, Wednesday at 1 p.m. is our sweet spot for a webinar in
Oh,
case anybody wants
okay.
to. So, but I mean, we have
Wednesday at
turnout.
1.
Mhm.
And you have attendees from, I would think, all over the world.
Yeah, we do. Of course, it's the association space. So a lot of them are in the DC area, a lot of them are Chicago, but then all over the United States. And then, yes, sometimes when we ask people where they're joining us from, they are all over the world, which is so amazing.
That's awesome. So Wednesday at 1. Um, and how far out do you have your official speakers and title? How far out are you sufficiently booked, with all
Yeah,
the detail?
I like to be booked 2 months out, fully booked. Now I've got events throughout the rest of the year, just depending on when people want to speak. But when I look at the calendar, I want the next 2 months. So we're in March, we're about to move into April. I want April and May to be fully booked right now.
I
That's
would
just
think on the association side of things, you may be booked out a little farther because you're balancing the in-person, the
right,
Capitol Hill Day, the membership breakfast with the board. You're balancing kind of
right.
a more dynamic calendar
And
of in-person and virtual.
certainly we've got our in-person events booked. Like that's dialed in for the year already. And actually our presidential forum event, which only happens approximately once a month, I mean, we're full on that for this year. So I'm ready to start booking presidential forum for next year now. So
Wow,
pretty
wow.
amazing. I'm very excited about that. Yeah.
So give us a peek behind the curtain on topics. What are some of the upcoming topics for presidential forums?
Ooh, this is a great question. Hold on a second. I do have to refer to
I
our
don't think
calendar,
I've
but
ever
they're all
attended.
there.
I think I've attended a
We're at,
presidential forum.
we're at presidentialforum.com. And this is an event for association executives. It's by invitation. So if you'd like to be added to the
Oh,
invitation list,
maybe I haven't been invited then.
yeah, email me, Nicole at ustranscorp.com, and I can add you to our list. But so coming up, we've got personalizing the member experience, smarter strategies, less effort, navigating the looming membership cliff.
God, that's not dramatic or
I
anything.
know, right?
Jeez.
Maximizing Salesforce for associations, the evolving role of associations in workforce development.
Okay. Okay.
We've got one on certification programs, hiring strategies. Later in the year, we're going to do one on AI so that,
Of course you are.
of
At
course,
least
we are.
one.
but later in the year, because by then it will have been about a year since our last one. So things will have changed. Let's talk about that again. And that's, I say a year since our last presidential forum. Obviously, we've got the webinar content and an ongoing culture change. And then we're going to end the year with Let's Talk Tech 2025 into 2026. So, you know, that doesn't have a description on it yet because we don't know yet. We just know that we want to talk about tech trends as we're leaving the end of the year and going into next year. So
you built out your content calendar and then you find speakers or match your subject matter experts with your topics. What comes first, the speaker or the topic?
It's the subject matter experts, and we come up with topics with them. So we sit down and go like, what are, especially if they're vendors, what are you seeing with your clients? What's on their mind right now? What's really relevant in the association space? Let's come up with a topic together. And then we kind of expand out from there.
Yeah. So I see some of these are all moderated. Do you find a benefit in limiting attendance to any online or virtual education? Have you guys ever done that to try to drive up interest or energy?
They're comfortably at the right size right now. You know,
they just naturally settle
right
out.
Now. It could grow, and I could see a point where we did need to do that because it's a roundtable discussion and too large of a group, and you can't have that. So, I mean, that could potentially be a thing in the future. Right now, we have about 30 to 40 people show up on the day of, which is pretty comfortable for an hour and a half discussion for everybody who has something to say to be able to speak. So, yeah.
So I'm going to ask you one last best practicing question, just given all the online education you guys are delivering. How do you manage the chat versus the discussion and ensure that the chat, you want an active chat, but very often the chat then becomes a separate conversation, a separate experience. You know, it's on a different level, or it's different people talking about different things. How do you try to ensure the alignment of the chat with the discussion being had, you know, as part of the webinar, the out loud webinar?
Yeah, that's a great question and a very valid concern. Some of our instructors are concerned about that as well. The most important thing is to be weaving them together, and a lot of that is on the instructor, but also on us as the staff who are staffing that event, to make sure we're stopping, we're looking, seeing what the questions are, inviting people to talk more about what they've put in the chat. So that instead of these being two separate things happening at the same time, we kind of marry those experiences together. And obviously some speakers, that's easier for them than others, and some content that's easier for. So it's not going to be the exact same experience for every webinar, but that's kind of the goal, and how you keep it from spiraling into two completely unrelated events happening at the same time.
Well, thank you so much for this. I also am curious, what JOMO have you been most proud of so far this year? What have you said no to that has just liberated you?
What have I said? Well, so this sounds so terrible, but we used to have ducks, and we loved our ducks.
So, what?
Ducks. My family kept ducks.
DUCKS.
Yes. Okay. For eggs. And they were fun. My kids loved them. It was wonderful. But I have to tell you, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back for us. And we have rehomed our ducks with our lovely friends who also keep ducks. And so the ducks are very happy. Our friends are happy because they have layers again, because their ladies had aged out of laying eggs.
Okay.
And I mean, it's this little thing, but we don't have to get up every morning and do the duck chores, and before bed every night and do the duck chores and duck chores.
Okay. So no more ducks for you.
We dialed
your ducks are happy. They're living their best life somewhere else.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, who did you have to say no to?
The ducks. No, I mean, it was kind of one of those things. Like my husband, a lot of the work fell on him, but he likes his duck eggs. And I was the one who had to say, babe, this is a lot. And we deserve to enjoy our lives a little bit and rest a little bit. We've had a challenging couple of years. We can always get ducks again in the future.
Ducks may be in our future. They might go back to ducks. I love it. Oh my gosh, you and your ducks. That's great. And you're right. That closed door doesn't mean it couldn't reopen at another time.
And that's the thing about saying no, right? It doesn't mean forever. And we have all these different seasons in our life. You know, sometimes sometimes you want to say more yes to more, and sometimes you got to scale it back. And it was really just the ducks are like the symbol of us saying, hey, we're scaling it back this year, and that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Hold your ducks.
Hold
We're
your
going
ducks.
to just take a break. We're going to take a break. Well, I appreciate that. We're in that midst right now with spring break coming up.
Yeah.
There's the FOMO of, oh, everyone's planning their this and that. And we're saying no, we're saying we're going to have a staycation and just be at home and trying to get the family to see that as a benefit, as a good thing, not as if we're missing out on something. So we're going to say no ducks this spring break, maybe next spring break, but I love it. Nicole, thank you so much. You're such a wealth of knowledge and experience, and UST is doing such great things on the education front, and we thank you for it. We ask you to continue and keep bringing us your best practices, the things that are working, your tech platforms, and know that we really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Elisa. We appreciate you and all of our other instructors as well. And of course, all of our attendees. It was really fun talking to you today.
You as well. And I know Andrew sends his best. We'll hopefully get him back with us next time. And until then, put your members and your mission first. Well, hello, friend. It's just you and me today. There is no Andrew Chamberlain.
Oh, such a shame.
Just us for this episode.